Peace. I'm Yolanda Marie, Yani for short. Welcome to one of our very first CT sessions. I am here with the wonderfully amazing Kahina. I actually got to sit down and talk with her in person last week, and we had to bring it back around because current events literally fell in their pocket and aligned right with what we were talking about. And for our creators therapy session, we were talking about Black people and anger, and also how people of color in general do not typically get the opportunity to express the spectrum of emotions that all of us have as humans. And there seems to be a stark reaction to when someone of color displays something other than happy-go-lucky, chipper, or a little bit sad.
Entertainment, yeah.
Exactly. So today we're coming back to hear Kahina's thoughts and have discourse on WTF happened at the 2022 Oscars with Will Smith and Chris Rock. We are going to kind of unpack that as two Black women because the rest of the world's talking about it. So we want to share from the perspective of people who are actually of color and have emotions. So Kahina, please.
So I think when I first saw it live, I was watching it live. One, I immediately hated the G.I. Jane joke. Like, it was not something that as a viewer I was laughing at. And then from Will's kind of like uncomfortable smile and head nod, but instantly looking at Jada, who was just like shaking her head, like the clear discomfort, the clear contempt for what he said. It just made me feel so bad because I remember, like, I think it was probably earlier in the week, she had shared on her like Red Table Talk platform or whatever, how difficult it has been for her to embrace her alopecia, shaving her head, what that all meant for her as a Black woman, because you know that our hair is basically connected to our identity. It's how people identify us. It's how people distinguish us from other women of color as Black women. So for her, especially such an iconic actress when it comes to being known for her beauty, shaving her head must have been like a really tough moment for her, because this is something that, like, Black women in our hair is like pretty much usually a status of our beauty. And going from one, seeing her be vulnerable enough to share with us like this moment where she admitted to not feeling beautiful and really not feeling like herself, especially because of like the nature of alopecia, where it's an autoimmune disease. It's not really like as cosmetic as people make it seem. It's your body like attacking itself. That's pretty scary in itself. And then pivoting to her, exactly. Yeah. Pivoting to her, like really having a moment where her and Will were stepping out to the Oscars. She seems to have really found beauty in her appearance. And I remember seeing like the pictures of them coming into the Oscars, like, damn, she's really killing it right now. I can tell she feels beautiful in this moment. So for a joke like that to hit her when she's feeling herself, she's at the Oscars with her husband, she's feeling beautiful, she's embracing her appearance after recently sharing with her some struggles she's had with her image. And then boom, the G.I. Jane joke. It was kind of just like, wow, that's corny. And as a viewer, I saw that. But then when it cut to Will's reaction, when he went up on stage, I knew it wasn't going to be for a bear hug. Because at the end of the day, like, people have emotions. I did a little bit of digging throughout the week because so many people were talking about it. It turns out that joke was unscripted. It wasn't told during the rehearsal. So I could imagine it kind of catching Will off guard and even catching Jada off guard, because if it was something that they had discussed prior to, I don't think she would have that type of like, come on, man, like reaction. And honestly, like, I personally feel like, could it have been quote unquote handled better? Everybody says that, sure. But am I mad at how it was handled? No, not really. Because we talk about protecting Black women and defending Black women and all that good stuff. But it seems to be that this protection should only occur when it's convenient, when it's quote unquote appropriate. But there's never really an appropriate time to address disrespect, because disrespect in itself isn't appropriate. And that was disrespectful, joke itself. So Will going up there, smacking him and sitting down and telling him clearly, stop talking about my wife. it is what it is. You know, people talk about, and there's been a lot of conversation about freedom of speech, especially with comedians feeling like, oh, we should have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech doesn't absolve you from the consequences of how your words impact others. And I think for me, as someone who's a writer, someone who shares my words often, I'm very careful about how I put it out there, because people can receive it in any way that they want to and react to it in any way that they want to. And if that means, you know, getting smacked across the face for saying something inappropriate, you have to be ready to take that. It's really just a nature of the game. You're going to get feedback. And sometimes that feedback isn't going to be what you're looking for. But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to be able to own that your words may have affected somebody in a negative way. And then the reactions from the celebrities was super interesting, in seeing someone like Will Smith, who doesn't even curse in his rap music. Like, he was known for being like the parental friendly, cookie cutter, like, honestly, like, ideal Black man, where he's like very non-threatening family man. You see him, like, even though he may play different roles, but in his personal life, he's very open with just being a likable person. And this narrative have basically turned him into, oh, Will must be going through something mentally, or like, Will is not okay. He has anger issues. He has this, he has that. Like, a week ago, nobody would be saying that about Will Smith. And all it took was for him to show us this different side of him, anger. And now all of a sudden, it's like his entire legacy is apparently tarnished by this one moment. And I really don't think that's fair. And I feel like that kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, where we don't allow people to embrace a holistic being that is the human experience. You're going to be a family man, and you're going to be likable, and you're going to be funny and charismatic, but you're also going to be angry. You're also going to want to smack people. You're also going to get upset. That doesn't change who Will Smith is as a being. And all of these reactions where people are implying that something might be off with him mentally just goes to show how disconnected we are from being in touch with our emotions. You don't need to be mentally unstable to get angry. I feel like the average person probably experiences anger every single day, but we don't all have it, you know, live on TV for everybody to watch.
Yeah.
And at the same time, unfortunately, because, you know, you don't see him in these angry moments. This looks like it might be like the first time that these feelings have ever happened for him. And he probably experiences that type of anger probably every day.
So I want to dig into that there. So the interesting part, I had a layered response to seeing it happen. My initial response was, as a person who used to deal with anger issues myself, my first kind of groan was like, I was definitely one of those people that was just like, I wish he hadn't hit him, not just on national television, but just in general, especially because of the kind of role model he's been, and the conversation in general as a collective that we're trying to have with how do we respond to things, and whether or not violence, and no, it was not some like atrocious violent act, but it was still something physical. And one of the first responses I saw on the social media was from a mother. And she was like, my children love him, and my children are figuring out what's right and what's wrong. And seeing no repercussions happen after it happened. And what message does it send about this being okay? And that there's been no conversation on the back end about, I could have handled it differently. It shouldn't have been a physical thing. Like, the fact that the physical act of it was wrong, and admitting like, yes, heat of the moment, cool. We all sometimes have negative reactions and angry reactions and get physical. I used to hit something bad. That was one of those things my parents were just like, you cannot go about doing this, and was fearful about me getting into a relationship and still having that habit and hitting another man. So I think it's one of those conversations that gets a little dicey for me, because I'm just like, yeah, the joke did not go over well. And the layeredness of it, like, did Chris Rock know she had a condition? Because several other people and comedians came out saying, I had no idea. I don't watch the show. The joke would have been fine if she didn't have an underlying medical condition.
I feel like as an artist, though, especially as a comedian, you have to do your research. Like 100%. Even as a writer, like, if I'm gonna, let's say, interview somebody or talk to someone, I'm gonna do some Google, see what they've been up to, see, you know, like what about their life might be off limits. And even in journalism, you see so many times people interview artists and ask them the most like invasive, offensive question. And it's like, did you not look up that like their parents died, or this happened or that happened, before you just go and say things? I think as entertainers, as conversation starters, we have to be, this is like a lesson. We have to be more mindful
and accountable, 100%. And I think that's just where my perspective was coming from, was just accountability on all sides.
Yeah.
That the physical act shouldn't have happened. He could have gotten the same response had he just shouted what he shouted at the end on stage. It probably would have got the same reaction of like, oh, my bad, whoa, like, because he was clearly still shook by hearing him. Like, everybody shook hearing Will Smith cuss. I think the layeredness, and then I also I resonate with some of the people who have been like, I think this is indicative of something larger happening, simply because I had been following the stories since the Red Table Talk began and the entanglement situation. And it seeming like there's a lot of things that he's been dealing with internally, and whether or not he's actually getting the help, or given the Hollywood space that he's in, having space held for him to go through these emotions. Like, he cried on TV because of what happened at the Red Table Talk and was essentially obliterated and embarrassed by his wife, and said that. And I think where some people are coming from saying that, I think this was a show of something that was deeper underlying, and Chris got the short end of the stick because that was the breaking point. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Because like we said, you mentioned, this is not who we know Will Smith to be. This is not who we've seen him be in the public eye. And yes, he may go through these things every day, but I think in terms of the public eye, he's been crucified through memes and gifts since the whole entanglement thing came out. And the fact that, and I think people are having less empathy and sympathy for Jada because of how callous she seemed to be when it was about Will.
This is like misogynoir in action, honestly. Yeah. Because if the roles were reversed, there would be no discourse about Jada being a clown and this and that. Like, when Black women get cheated on by their significant others, it's never the man who is shamed for their actions. Yeah. And also, like, not even to get into whether it was cheating or not, because they had their relationship like, we are like, not,
their relationship is not like anybody's standard relationship.
Yeah, they had a whole different set of rules and regulations. So even that, like, people struggle to understand the dynamics of their relationship. People struggle to understand the layers of consent that were involved on both parties for, the whole situation. And it's very sad how Will's, like, over the past couple of months, his legacy has been tied to his relationship, because we only know because they told us. They were vulnerable enough to share, like, we are a non-traditional family. Our marriage is non-traditional. We're not perfect because everybody, says the Will and Jada love and this and that. Yep. They were honest enough to share with us. And they didn't have to do that, honestly. Yeah. They didn't have to tell us any of this. And I don't think anybody would really ever know unless they kind of opened up and shared.
They'd still be that golden star, black.
Exactly. But I think what they did was honorable, because it kind of showed us that you guys thought we were perfect, and look at everything we have going on. We're still that perfect couple, though, just in our own ways and through our own shit. And I think that as an artist, as, just somebody who contributes to the culture, like, having that vulnerability and being brave enough to be that vulnerable was such a huge moment, especially in Black families where we are just trained to just believe the nuclear family, the mom, dad, children, husband, wife. And we know damn well, that's not really how our families go. We have half siblings and this family and that. And some parents don't even get married. There's divorces and there's so many layers. And we use Black celebrity couples as like this goalpost where it's like, we want to be like B and Hove, and we want to be like Will and Jada, but none of these marriages are perfect. And I think that they were trying to normalize this conversation of, you can have, the marriage and the family, but it's not going to be that straight route. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that they kind of tried to give us some insight into what their marriage is really like, into how their home is run, like such an intimate moment they shared with us. And it became almost comedy to everyone. And
I think that speaks to the maturity level of us as culture and as a society. And I think that was the part where maybe if further thought out, or if we were in a different space as a people, it would have gone over differently. I think, yes, it was a totally missed opportunity to grow as a society and as a culture. But I think especially as Black people, there's so many other things we have not yet unpacked yet. The maturity level was not there to receive something like this and be open-minded enough to say like, oh, this is like the same way not to segue, but the Nick Cannon situation, the same way Black people have drug him and it's like, he's a hoe, he's this, he's that, because it's something we're not used to and it's something different. And because we as a people have not had the space to just be open and to experiment and to play with ideas, all these other ideas that are different than what we've had internalized since we were children or had painted for us on the TV screen is like, oh no, that's some wild-ish, can't do that, whatever. And so then it does get to become comedy, because again, what has comedy been for us as a people? It's a band-aid, it's an outlet, it's the way to cry without crying, and it's the cry for help, and it's the, well, I don't get it, so I'm just going to make fun of it, because if I don't get it, then, you know, I'd rather do that, because then I don't have to feel bad about not getting it. So I think it's one of those things where I love what their intention may have been. But I think, again, like we mentioned, the accountability thing, I think we also have to sit down and then have it be a continuous conversation if you want it to have the impact that it should have. I think it can't just be a one-stop shop. We had the episode, we had some conversations, because it did leave space for what the internet did, which was go up in flames and make him a meme and essentially tarnish what the legacy that he's built. And you can't say he's not one of the most phenomenal actors of all time, arguably. This man shapeshifts phenomenally and brings us phenomenal characters, and all that has now been put into question because of one act and then one ongoing situation that was just sort of brought to our forefront and then sort of left there as well. So I think if there'd been more conversation just in all aspects, and again, these are people, these are their choices, these are their lives. We're just here, the audience. We don't know these people. But I think when you do make a choice to share your life and the intimates, I think there has to be a few more things you do as well, because then it does leave it open to be open season and just drug through the mud. And then we wind up with an Oscars moment and everybody feels like, oh, this is so out of character. And it's like, yeah, well, we've only seen tidbits and snippets, and it's their right to show the tidbits and snippets, but then the fallout does become the fallout. Like you said, we choose to be on these platforms and share our words. And like you said, you do your research and you're considerate. I think we all have that responsibility, especially living in our social media culture. We have to be more mindful and also open-minded to the fact that if we're sharing on these platforms, we've opened ourselves up to whatever comes with sharing ourselves on these platforms. Which is why it's so important to me to like sit down with people like you and have these conversations, because so many people are in echo chambers, so they're not hearing something different than what they know. And so we get this prolific meme culture about something that probably shouldn't be a meme.
Yeah, emphasis on like shouldn't be a meme, because I think the people who were laughing the most about it did the least amount of research on the actual situation. And I think by nature as a writer, I'm always trying to make sure I have the full context. Like I've read Will's book, I've seen the entanglement, like the red table talks, and just like the follow-ups of conversation that's happened since then. And I really don't even feel like Will was acting out of character in his defense of Jada, because in his book, he speaks a lot about feeling defenseless when it came to protecting his first wife, his mother, like defending women in his family. And I think now, especially, he probably feels even more overprotective of his wife, of his family, because of the way that the internet has made it basically into a joke, their marriage into a joke. And this is their real life, you know, like I think that people kind of forget that celebrities and people on the internet, influencers, whoever, they're real people who have real emotions. And even, you know, on the other end, on Chris Rock's end, him in his past, he's made several jokes about Will and Jada. He's joked, the last time he had a stage at the Oscars, he joked about them boycotting the Oscars. They weren't even in the audience, and he was cracking jokes about how they weren't there. They were doing that in protest of more Black actors and actresses not getting nominations that they deserved in that time. And all of that kind of just bubbles up to the fact that in this day and age, people like to pass commentary, make memes, make jokes, kind of laugh off situations that they actually aren't even open to learning more about. There's so many learning moments that's come across in this past week with this conversation where you could have learned more about non-traditional marriages. You could have learned more about Will Smith's past when it comes to his family dynamic since he was a child, not just starting with his marriage with Jada. And we could have even learned more about why is it so wrong to be joking about Black women's hair like that? And it's funny because, you know, Chris Rock making that documentary Good Hair and all that other stuff, that's all good and dandy. But for someone to be making, you know, commentary and having these conversations on hair should be very aware of calling Black women G.I. Jane and this and that. Even just aside from the fact, yeah, the character is bald and that's why he made the joke. It's like the masculinization of the Black woman where it's like, we are memes. We are compared to men. We are compared to soldiers. Like, it's just something that I wish people leaned into more in the conversation versus Will's reaction. Like, let's talk about not provoking people. Let's talk about not going out our way to make ill-centered jokes. And that doesn't mean that, you know, people can't be funny anymore. But if your definition of comedy is poking fun at, you know, an illness or even just making fun of Black topics that are used to oppress Black women like our hair, then maybe you're not funny, you know? And I think in terms of Will's reaction, you're definitely right in terms of the example it sets with the violence and the repercussions. I do think that it was pretty admirable that Will like almost instantly like apologized on stage, one to the Academy and the viewers, and then on his personal Instagram, he wrote one like directly to Chris Rock and to all the viewers, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I can very much see that there was like remorse in terms of the public violence, but I also could see someone when I see Will Smith who's tired of being the butt of the jokes, of his wife being the butt of the jokes, his family being the butt of the jokes. And because he's not as openly like aggressive, he doesn't really like, I know he seems the meme, so he doesn't really clap back at it. He just keeps on working and keeps on grinding through it. We don't know, you know, if this is something that has been irritating him for a long time. We don't know how he really feels. And that's where it's kind of like, you know, sometimes, like you said, when you open yourself up, you got to have those follow-up conversations and kind of take your viewers or followers on that journey with you so that you get a better sense of where they're coming from in these moments, in these reactions. I'm hoping that this isn't just something that we sweep under the rug, and that he's able, if they're open to like kind of unpacking why being offended like that matters. And it's crazy because I really did see myself and Will in that situation and what I was dealing with that brand within the past week, where it's like, I wanted to smack someone. I felt that, but you kind of have to take your followers on the journey and be like, listen, this is a fucked up moment, but I'm going to walk you through why it's fucked up and how we can heal together through it. And I hope that Will kind of takes that route where it's like, you can just say, go to hell, slap somebody and call it a day. You 100% are in that right to be able to do that. But when you have a platform and when you have that influence and impact, those are moments where you kind of have to unfortunately be that bigger person and slow down and learn how to channel the anger and make it into a moment instead of a meme, instead of, you know, a viral sensation. You kind of use that to make it a teachable moment and be like, this is why this joke was in ill taste. This is why I don't appreciate this or that. I think that probably would have had the impact that I'm sure he's looking for. But also at the same time, when I think about the conversation in general about saying how Will Smith is just so egregious for how he acted, I think about how much violence we see amongst white actors and just white people in general, how much violence that we're accustomed to seeing, where we have people who are in those crowds, sexual violence, domestic violence, chilling. You know, nobody is seeing them as heinous beings. Nobody is taking it away from their work. They are still sitting in the crowd at the Oscars, you know, like clearly it didn't affect their careers that much. Mm-hmm. But when you see a Black person have a moment that may not be so stellar, all of a sudden it's like, we got to blacklist him. And that's where I feel like we need to even that playing field, because there is so much regular violence that happens in every industry, every single day. Mm-hmm. But this one moment, while it was, you know, unfortunate for the world to see, it is it's like a drop in the ocean of how much happens with these celebrities on the day-to-day, and the lack of accountability that comes from his white counterparts. But now all of a sudden he has to be like the face of anti-violence, you know, like it's just so nuanced. It's very racially motivated, where Black people, we are like, we have to be excessively accountable for any wrongdoings that we have, whether it's violence, whether it's lapses of judgment, no matter how stellar we are otherwise, we always have to be on. And that one moment where we break, or where we have moments of vulnerability, where we're sharing things or experiencing things that may be non-traditional from what we're used to seeing from, you know, these Black figures, it just becomes such a bigger deal. But when you have white counterparts who have multiple wives and children and this and that and all these different things happening, it's just the norm and it's fine. And it's just them as an individual. It doesn't represent an entire race. And I just feel like that's not fair. And it's why these moments are such big moments. We can never just be and just live as holistic beings, the good, the bad, the ugly. We just always got to be the good, the good, the good, like that model Black person. And it's just unrealistic.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. I love several of the things that you mentioned, and I definitely agree. It needs to be a conversation that's continued, but yes, there also does need to be equality and equity in terms of the white counterparts, like you've mentioned, because yes, we have seen way more heinous, way more obtrusive, way more inappropriate things play out in the public eye. So yes, again, going back to what you mentioned, in our original conversation about the imbalance that we don't get to be holistic beings, and that there is this sort of overbearing and toxic expectation of us to just always be good, or to do it, you know, in private, you know, do it in the back.
Behind closed doors, not in front of the white people, like we always say. Don't do it in front of the white people.
Exactly. And I think that was one of my other issues with it, was the fact that was some people's only issue, was like, why'd you do it in front of the white people? It's like, forget that it happened in front of the white people. We need to focus on, why did it happen? Let's unpack that. Why were the responses what they were? Let's unpack that. Let's unpack what defense looks like and what should be the different layers of defense. Let's unpack that. Let's unpack what care looks like on the back end. Did someone go ask if Chris was okay? Did someone go say, well, what happened? Let's talk through this. What are you feeling? What made you, you know, get to that point? Did someone talk to Jada and say, you know, like, what did you go through in that moment? You know, how do you feel about how, you know, Will responded and reacted? You know, what
like, I haven't seen anybody wonder how Jada is doing. I have seen so many people talking about Will, talking about Chris, and I get it. Obviously, those are the two people involved, but I've seen little to no discourse around, how did Jada feel, or how is she doing, you know?
And I think part of that stems from the fact that she's sort of been painted as
villain,
a toxic female and a villain. And I get all the aspects, because again, we have a drop in the bucket of what their real life is, and all we see is what has been shown to us via the devices, the internet, the TV and the little bit that they have shared with us. So I get all the aspects of people being like, oh, she don't need no defense. We seen, you know, how she moved, and sort of having this conversation of masculine, feminine, and does she carry more masculine energy, or is Will the more?
And that's what we're talking about with like Black people not being able to be holistic beings, where she unfortunately is always seen as being strong and masculine and she's got it, you know? And it unfortunately means that I guess that she doesn't have feelings. I guess that she doesn't have soft moments or insecurities or vulnerabilities. Like that's where it's frustrating, like just as like a creator, as somebody who puts themselves out there, where once you have like, I guess, a persona, it's very hard to break out of it. And people just assume that no other side of you exists but the one that you share, which is two sides of the coin, where it's like, I get it, but also at the same time, as human beings, we need to understand it's unrealistic to think that what somebody may portray or share is the entirety of their being. And that's happening with both Will and Jada, where it's like, Will is this model Negro, this model Black man all the time. You can never have lapses of judgment. And Jada is this like toxic female, super strong, like she doesn't need any help. She got it, like type of being. And I guess that means that she's excluded from moments of embarrassment, of shame, of vulnerability, of sensitivity. And that's where there needs to be like a bridging of the gap as people who consume the content, who consume, you know, what these people put out there, and the creators themselves, where it's like, does it need to be on the creators to show that total like view of them, that 360 view of every side, every angle of them? Should artists and creators pick and choose what they show, and then they just have to keep that persona going? Are you still being genuine at that point? If you're only sharing a certain side of yourself, is it genuine or is it a curated image? Like it's such a fine line between 100%. Wanting to protect parts of yourself and then like creating an entire persona that's excluding very important parts of your being, which includes your raw emotions.
Yeah. And in film and theater, they call that typecast, like somebody's first role, they play it so well, people are only seeking you for that one thing. I think it also goes back to the sentiment that we've kind of had, especially as people of color. I think it ties into that, don't let them see you sweat. Never let them see you down. I think it really screams to the fact that we need to break that, because they don't see us sweat, because they don't see us down. They don't believe that exists for us. So even though it may be uncomfortable, it means let's let them see you sweat. We talked for decades about Britney Spears' meltdown, but what? People either had empathy or some other type of feeling about what she was going through. It was either she's crazy, or the people who were like, maybe sis needs some help. She let herself, she had her public meltdown and people moved accordingly. Lindsay Lohan.
Her meltdowns, all those girls' meltdowns, it changed how paparazzi was allowed to interact with celebrities. Because celebrities started like hitting paparazzi, throwing bleach and hitting paparazzi's cars and banging them up. It changed how paparazzis interact with celebrities. And that's where you kind of see how sometimes you need to wow out. Sometimes you need to show that emotion, or else they're going to think it's okay. And people are going to think that's how cycles perpetuate.
Exactly.
Like the celebrity culture, paparazzi culture was so toxic in the early thousands, where they were like literally doing the most, breaking things down. And then once celebrities started really going crazy and being like, no, this is too much. And we saw that with Britney Spears. It's a very different relationship that paparazzi has with celebrities today, where it's very hard to see like the nuances. Celebrities are getting better at protecting themselves because they saw the impact of the early thousands celebrity culture. Like those moments that seem to be so heinous in that moment, like that Britney Spears meltdown. I remember seeing that picture of her shaving her head and her with the umbrella bashing the paparazzi's car. And everybody thought she lost it. But guess what? Here we are 10 years later, and paparazzi are definitely not the same that way that they were 10 years ago. And that's because
no longer a lucrative business. It's no longer a lucrative business. And the amount of paparazzi that exists, it's so small. Because that used to be what people wanted. Oh, your big break, you need your big break, go get a picture of so-and-so. That doesn't exist anymore. That's not the big thing anymore. And yes, social media helped dispel that because people started posting their own big pictures, but it also created a different environment. It changed the conversation. And though it's also controversial, I'm also so here for Kanye having his public meltdowns. He's changing conversation. We're actually talking about, instead of just like, oh, this Negro crazy, it's, oh, maybe he needs some help. And now that the Genius documentary has come out, it's like, oh, losing his mom, he might have never really recovered from that. It seems like he's still aching. It's humanizing people as people. And I think that is what will help change and bring progression, is if we stop trying to do the like, oh, we got to go out, suit and tie, we got to behave, and do the, here's how I'm really feeling. Here's what's going on. I'm showing up as myself and doing less of the like, all right, let's put on the good face, is a smile here, okay, and do the, you know what, yeah, I'm here. I don't feel great.
You see it even, I feel like Doja Cat is a great example of an artist who's been like, listen, I don't feel like doing the interaction today. I just want to make music. I'm really not in the mood for this, but I'm going to do it anyways. Like her rollout of, she did a rap for Taco Bell. Right before she posted the rap, she posted a TikTok like, hey guys, I really think this is stupid, but this is for, I'm getting a check. Like this is for promo. So I'm about to drop it. Here we go. And it ended up being like one of her best performing campaigns because she was just real about it, where she was like, listen, y'all, it's a Taco Bell wrap or whatever. She was talking about the pizza or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm clearly, it's not something I really care about, but I'm just here for it. Let's have fun with it, whatever.
Exactly.
Versus
Summer Walker
trying to act like I'm so excited about this partnership and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. Like bring authenticity back. Like I really love the authentic artist, actor, whomever, where it's just like, I'm not going to be perfect in every moment. I'm going to take you along the journey where sometimes I don't feel like doing this shit, but I'm doing it anyways. Or sometimes I'm really passionate about this. I'm really excited about this. The same way you see artists, be excited over dropping their music. Like, yeah. I want to see all angles of that. And, sometimes you're not always going to get it right. Finding your voice is difficult because the language you may speak, just how you present yourself, how you convey it may not easily be received by the people who are consuming it, especially now on the internet. Yeah, it may be repercussions. Some people may rock with it, some people may not.
Yep.
And I think about how you can handle it.
Yeah, and I think the more we push and have these conversations, the easier it'll become. The more you realize, oh, I can step out here and do this uncomfortable thing and share my story, and someone else is like, oh wow, like maybe I shouldn't laugh. Like I got something like that going on with me too. Maybe I need to change something. I think the more we're able to show up, like you said, and just be the holistic self and be organic and be like, yeah, Doja Cat vibe, I'm not it today. Or Summer Walker, people berated her when she was on these interviews, like, I don't feel it. This isn't my thing. I don't like interviews. I don't like live performances. I just want to do my little music and mind my business. Like, these are the conversations that help change culture, though. Like, it took Prince and Michael Jackson screaming at us and doing the most things that people say were outlandish, but it's like, why did it have to get to that point? Let's unpack how we got here. Because when we start doing that and we start accepting the holistic being instead of, oh no, I liked it better when you were just, the you that's got it together. It's like, yeah, but are you the you that has it together? And I think the more there's a separation of this illusion and more coming together of, this is just another human who just happens to live a little bit differently and have a different tax bracket than you do, but they eat, sleep, piss, shit, and have a full range and spectrum of emotions and life issues. Because just like you got a mother, father, daddy, uncles, aunts, cousins, friends, and all of y'all collectively as a unit have a whole range of life experiences that affect you on the daily, so do these people. They're just other people.
And that's why I don't believe in the term separating the art from the artist, because everything that we do create is basically like a product of our life, our experiences, what we've been through. Yes. Our art is a reflection of like the artist, like what we put out is a reflection of what we go through. And that phrase, I feel like kind of came about because we only want to see artists and creators when they're like perfect, cookie cutter. And if anything goes wrong with their personal life, it must not be connected to the work that they make or what they do. And I feel like even with Kanye West, we see how his personal life very heavily influenced what he created. There's no way you can separate his personal life from his creation, whether it's in fashion or music. You just can't, because it's embedded in it. Like even just looking at why My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was released. It was released in response to the whole Taylor Swift incident. He needed to clean up aspects of his personal life. So he said, here's a really good album. Like those types of stories behind why people even create things, it's all because of their personal lives. It's all because of quote unquote, the artists, their experiences. So we can't separate. It's all one. Look at Lemonade and 444. They needed to explain this scandal that happened on an elevator. And this is how they chose to do it, through their art. You can't separate that.
The art is our voice. You might not be able to sit me down in a forum like this, but maybe my art can say that.
Exactly.
That's literally why I created Artist Touch, because I was like, people have come too far disconnected from the art and their story, which is what makes the art. That is literally what inspired me to go about the Artist Touch journey and sharing people's stories. So like, people have forgotten us as creators are people, and us as people are stories.
That's why creators are looked at more as a business, and people feel like they can talk to creators crazy. And even like, just like in the service industry, look how people treat like people like photographers and things like that, where it's like, they are like machines. And when you start putting stories behind people, maybe we'll be a little bit more empathetic and just stop expecting, like, why hasn't my favorite artist dropped an album yet, or whatever, blah, 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 blah.
Rihanna, they will not leave this woman alone.
She started a whole family. You think that's not part of the artistry? You think that's not part? She has a whole multi-billion-dollar business now. You think that's not part of her artist journey? It's all connected, you know? And we have to understand, even with Frank Ocean, everything, his life is his art, you know? It's impossible to be able to separate those things. And I think that once we start humanizing artists, it'll allow us to understand why your favorite creator might be taking a hiatus, or why they might decide they want to switch up the type of work that they put out. They want to do something different. It's all connected. And I think that if we kind of learn more about people's backstories, we'll be able to, one, appreciate the work a lot more. It's so cool when you find out the meaning of why did you say that, or why is this song, you know, like, why did you put this out? Learning about backstories to me kind of helps me appreciate things so much more. And even like, think about like that Instagram page, Humans of New York, where if you don't read the captions, it's just pictures. But then when you read the captions, you're like, wow, like this is just, it's so beautiful. It just brings life to things. But when you skip to the art and you just jump to the result and don't take time to learn about the journey, or want to learn about the journey, then that's where you feel like moments like this lap at the Oscars is like such a big deal, such a big moment. Cause it's just like, it must be unusual for you to see something that's not perfect and finished. But when you follow artists on the journey, you see the imperfections, you see the failures, you see the wins, and it kind of just makes their creation just feel much more holistic
100
and applicable to your life. You learn that, you know, your artists are more like you than you think.
Yeah. And I think when we draw it even further down to the bone, I think it returns to a self-love thing. If you spend more time with yourself and getting to know yourself and expressing as yourself, because I believe so many people use other artists as their outlet, as their expression. Like everybody's like, oh, that new Summer Walker dropped, I'm gonna get ready to cry. It's like, no, start taking
you
some
can cry
time
by
to
yourself,
cry.
actually.
Yeah, start taking some time to cry. Just let that happen. Don't try to look for the thing to open the valve. Like, try opening the valve yourself. You can do it. And so instead of relying on this external force, start spending some time with you instead of being like, oh, this artist needs to come on and hurry up because I need them for such and such. It's like, no, you need you.
Right.
They're choosing them. Her not putting out work, Kanye doing his shit and talking in the streets, that's doing him and figuring out what he needs and what
now you got to do you and figure out what that looks like for you. Yes. And a lot of people, like you said, they rely on creators to come do all the work of the self-development for them. And that's why people get so disappointed when their faves disappoint them or do something crazy. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to not be disappointed when you kind of already have a good relationship with yourself. You don't really rely on these people to be the role models or speak for you. Like I hardly ever see Black celebrities now as like representatives for our entire race. Cause it's like, I represent my culture, my race, my background as myself. Like, I don't think Will Smith needs to do that for me. So it's not like, like whatever Will Smith to me does is a reflection on Will Smith, and that's okay. But people who make it seem like everything got to be like for all of us, no, you got to take some responsibility and be for yourself and allow Will to be him for him, while you could, celebrate what he's done as a Black contributor and, the film and artistry industry. But at the same time, we can't just keep having celebrities, especially like the well-polished cookie cutter celebrities, be the representatives and be the voices. Yeah, we are everyday people who also have voices too. We could use our voices in that same exact way that they did. And that's when the change comes, when more of us start doing being our own unique individual selves and pushing for the things that matter to us. Everything else can then begin to change, because then it's not just relying on, oh, well, this celebrity didn't go to that march or didn't speak on this topic. And, well, they should have said something about something because, this is a Black issue and you're Black. So you should have said something about that. Like, no, if you feel some type of way, you say it. You can start the conversation. Why is nobody talking about it? Then talk about it. Start the conversation. Be that. I think people think that, you need a big following or platform or whatever to get your voice across. Like, I consider myself to still be a very small creator. And when I put my story out there on my experience with that brand, a lot of people heard me and I ended up getting the compensation and the conversation that I wanted. And 100%. This is like me and my like little 5,000 followers up against an influencer who has like hundreds of thousands. Don't downplay it. She has 5K and growing, period. It's not small. Period. It's not as big as the person I was speaking up against, like to that point where if I had just been like, well, somebody bigger should take on this conversation. Why isn't bigger Black influencers talking about inequity and pay in the influencer space? If I could just be like, oh, why isn't Jackie Aina talking about this or such and such talking about this? I just decided to talk about it. And if people want to listen, they're going to listen. Yeah. If more people took the liberty of being able to tell their stories instead of relying on people to tell the stories for them, then maybe real change could really come about. And maybe it wouldn't be as shocking or as crazy when our faves, our celebrity faves, do something that may seem quote unquote out of character. Because then you'll understand. I have moments where I'm out of character, where I have to apologize, where I'm not always in the right. And that's just part of character. I was expressing another feeling that we all have. And that's that. Just expressing. But when we think that artists and celebrities are like a different category of human, where because they have this platform, it automatically makes them model citizens. Like, this translation is where things get lost in the sauce, because increased exposure or wealth does not equate to, a perfect human being. Yeah, it's not the same. It's really not the same. Like, I really love that quote that just said, money does not change you. It just makes you who you were amplified. 100% believe that. 100%. That's how so many of your faves or celebrities go broke, because you were who you were before the money. You just now
have some money. So let's all engage with each other as humans. Also, I want to pause and say, yes, you brought up Jackie Aina. I love how she is bringing about showing Black lavishness and posh and what people use that, oh, that's some white people shit. Thank you, sis, for going ahead and doing it because it's what you like.
And that's just that on that. I feel like people act like you have to act like a particular type of Black person. And Jackie said, no, I don't care if it's white people shit. I'm a Black person. I'm using it. And guess what? Other Black people are feeling it. And that's why I feel like it's important for us as regular people, I guess, to express our lives, because it shows that Black people aren't a monolith.
Yeah.
Some of us, are super frugal and won't go, do a 12,000 step skincare routine or buy this fancy thing or whatever. But some of us will, and that's okay. And even just like on a larger scale, companies don't speak to Black people, don't speak to brown people because they assume we're all this one being. But if we become more expressive as people and show there's more than one side, some of us are posh, some of us are preppy, some of us are hood, some of us are, like medium class or whatever, middle class, some of us are regular Black people, like there's no regular, like there's no cookie cutter Black person. If more Black people became more open to sharing these stories, kind of like how Will and Jada did, like some people want that traditional like Christian or Catholic marriage or it's just us two, whatever. And Will and Jada said, no, we like to do X, Y, Z. This is how it works for our family. If more people were able to do that, maybe people wouldn't see Black people as such a monolith where it's like there's just one type of Black person. Either you're like the excellent Black person or you're like a total thug, gangster, whatever. And we need to have more voices for the people who are in between. We're all in between, honestly. Nobody is really truly
100%.
We're all on that spectrum, and we need to share our voices and share our stories more so that it's more normal when people who seem like they're on one end of that two sides of the ticker show that they have, traits from other sides. Will may be perfect in Hollywood, but still West Philly, end of the day, like it's all part of.
And Jada is still Baltimore.
Exactly.
So.
And that's just that on that, like we need to be able to share that, yeah, I'm this, but I'm also that. And with our skin color, just
on Tuesday, I might be that.
Exactly.
Catch me on Friday.
Exactly. I might be a scholar on Monday. On Friday, I might be in the club, shaking ass or whatever. Like, okay. And guess what? It's still the same scholar. It's still the same person. We create identities for ourselves, especially with the internet. We create brands for ourselves that kind of trap us. And we don't share the moments where we're not as bougie or we're not as ghetto or whatever. And that's where it's like the minute you step outside of that caricature that you put together, people think that it's like suddenly not you. And
I think that's the danger of that niche down culture, like niche down, because otherwise you're not going to have a this and a that. It's like,
I hate niche culture because what does that even mean?
Like, it's time to throw out the whole concept of niche down because you are more than just that. It's just like, can we focus on forget wanting to be viral and sensational. Let's just focus on cultivating a holistic community. Just engage with the people who want to engage with you. Like the people.
And the best communities are diverse.
Yes.
It's not just one type of conversation. Niche to me is where things get very monolithic, very homogeneous, where it's like, it means that you could only talk about such a specific thing to a specific group of people. As a creator, that advice is just so shitty to me because we're going to have more than one interest.
It's a chokehold.
We may not even, when we started our journey, I kind of think about this creator, Alyssa Ashley. She started off as a makeup influencer. Then she moved into photography. Now she's into fitness. And people are saying like, well, go back to makeup or do this or do that. It's like, that's not what she's passionate about anymore. That's not what she wants to do.
You're evolving.
People evolve, She may not be into makeup anymore. She doesn't really care for makeup anymore. She's into fitness. That doesn't take away from the work that she did in the makeup industry, in the makeup space, and in that influencing space. But you have to give people space to evolve, especially with celebrities. People have been in the industry since they were 15, 16 years old, and they're in their 40s and 50s. You really think they're going to be the same person they were? That would be frightening if they were. You got to, as a consumer, be as adaptable to be able to grow with your favorite creators. And if somewhere along the line, you kind of fall off of where they align, that's fine. guess what? There's going to be another creator who's talking exactly what you want to see. You just have to be open to exploring other people's content and being flexible and learning and growing with our favorite creators.
Yeah, you gotta be open and receptive to change, because that's the thing. You let these, and I know we all hate talking about the they, but whoever the big they are, take your power back from that. Help free your favorite creator and artist. You've seen all these people like getting the rights back from parents that had control over their children and their
buying their masters, owning their masters.
So it's like, help empower your faves to do that too. Like, don't continue to go with this culture that's been conditioned into us about, no, it shouldn't change, prissy perfect image, cookie cutter. You can help your fave do something different by doing it yourself and also showing that you're open and welcoming to it, because then we all get to do better, feel better,
right?
Better. We remove the whole pedestal thing, especially in the African American community. Like, the more we welcome change and embrace our own nuance, the greater freedom there is, because you realize how many other aspects of your life you've put parameters on, or you've put blinders on because, oh no, I'm Black.
Right.
And it really becomes amazing, and life becomes so much more colorful and rich when you, like you've said, I'm gonna just keep using that, the holistic human, the organic whole of a human, when we allow ourselves to begin having that experience instead of pigeonholing ourselves to the experience that we've been informed is our experience to the comfort of someone else, it'll blow your mind just how many people are in the same boat as you, but also have been waiting to welcome you to a different experience. Like, last night I had to laugh at myself. I went out to go get ice cream with my partner, and I ran out to go pick it up because it's the spot that you just walk up to. And this white lady was walking with her partner, and she like turned around and was like, oh, that ramen spot looks so good. And of course, my first reaction as a Black person, like, why is this white lady talking to me? Like, sis, you crazy. And I was just like, but then ironically, I literally had eaten lunch there at that spot. I was like, oh no, it's actually great ramen. Like, had that this afternoon. And then she turns around, like, oh my God, really? That's so cool. I should definitely stop there. Like, I'm about to get ice cream. And I was just like, well, ironically, yeah, I'm going to get ice cream too. And she's like, oh, what kind do you get? I always get such and such. It's my favorite, da da da. And I'm just like, why have I allowed myself not to just be as free as this white woman who doesn't know me from shit, but is just comfortable in her skin? Like, I'm going to get ice cream. Yeah. I'm talking to you. She clearly doesn't have a problem with me, but I'm sitting here having to walk myself through not being abrasive about someone just being free.
Conversation. Yeah.
Having conversation. It's like, yeah, no, and I was like, so for me, it was another liberating moment. Like, let me just take this moment to just be as free as myself as I want to be, instead of holding back because, oh, you're a Black person, don't just be out here, talking to any old body. She clearly didn't do any harm to me and just wanted to have a conversation. And it was so liberating for me to just indulge that, like, wow, this lady doesn't know me from anything, but was just like, I'm having a great night. I saw this person, hey, that ramen spot looks dope. Oh, you've been there before. Oh, cool. Cause it's like, when we see Black people in public, we have the same interactions. It's like, oh, sis, your hair looks great. Oh, have you eaten here before? Oh, that's great. It's just like, oh no, she's just another human, and she's having the same conversation.
Talking to another human.
Yep. It's like she's having the same conversation that I would openly and willingly have with another Black person if they'd asked me if I'd eaten at a spot, and I'd gladly entertain that conversation. It was an eye-opening moment for me. It was just like, oh yeah, you've got a little bit further to go in your unpacking, and also just allowing yourself to be a human. And then she was in line in front of me and was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get such and such. Like, oh, have you had this? Or like, you should try that. I was like, oh, you're gluten-free. Oh, wow. How is that? Like, what do you get to eat? What does that mean for you? It was like, again, just genuine concern and interest in just like, oh, you're another human being. I'm just happy to be out here. And she's like, yeah, and the weather's great. I'm so happy. Spring is on the way. And just like, oh my God, I love your nose ring. I just got my first one 2 weeks ago. You're so beautiful. It's like, she was just enjoying her night and wanted to share that with somebody else. And then like, after I ordered, and then we were in line for the pickup line together, and she was just like, oh, what did you actually wind up getting? I was like, oh, I got such and such. And she's like, oh, are you vegan? What's that like? I don't know if I could do it. Does that mean you just don't eat eggs? And so then it was like an open conversation about lifestyle. And she was like, oh, wow, you did it for health reasons. That's so beautiful. Like, I really admire you for that. That's so cool. Like, oh, my name is Marley. So shout out to Marley, because you definitely helped me open my mind up and realize, like, again, cut the siloing as a person of color. Like, there are people out here, there are more Marleys who are just like, I'm ready to just vibe and connect.
Right. Ready to join the community.
Exactly. 100%.
We have to diversify the community.
Exactly. Like that gatekeeping, it was definitely one of those moments of like, yeah, that gatekeeping of just like, oh, but that's a white person. It's killing us. And then it took me back to, I was like, my childhood, the amount of people who were of multiple ethnicities that were my best friends before we got educated on who were supposed to be our friends and who weren't. It could be a whole different world if we open back up to that childhood, adolescent openness of just, oh, you're a person.
Exploration. If you like something as a kid, you just did it. You didn't know if it was a Black thing, a white thing. It was just a thing.
Yep. So yeah, I think all of this, like when you boils down to it, the will thing, the being a perfect image thing, just if we allow ourselves to return to that childhoodness of just being curious and being open and just being
being receptive to things that are different from what you've done or seen or experienced before. That's how you learn.
Yep, being open to learning. Just like, and again, it's a life thing. The learning doesn't stop until your heart beating, your breath stops. So why try to put a gate and a parameter on what you can or are willing to learn? Let's just learn, because the vibe could be completely changed in a heartbeat if we were all just like, oh, well, I didn't think about it that way.
Right.
Try that.
We all need to do a better job at thinking of things in a different way.
Yeah.
Being more mindful.
100%. That mindfulness and accountability changes a whole
everything.
Oh man. Well, Kahina, do you have any closing thoughts? This has been a phenomenal conversation.
I guess I would just challenge everybody watching this to watch or consume something from someone that you've never consumed before. Find somebody new to follow, diversify your feed, and just be more mindful.
I love that. I love that. I will echo her sentiment. Please do that. Diversify your feed, follow someone different, stretch. Be okay with stretching.
Do something for the first time. Yes. There's always something that you haven't done before, or something that you haven't read about before or learned about before. It's such an unlimited universe when it comes to ways that we can be more mindful, holistic citizens of the world. Like, we're sharing this experience together. Let's learn more about each other's.
Yes, love that. So on that note, let us learn more about each other. Let's stretch. Your body needs it, but so does your non-physical. So let's do that. Let's stretch. Please like, comment, subscribe in the comments below. Let us know how you feel about this conversation. Where do you stand? How do you feel about the state of our engagement with celebrities, pedestals, accountability, and being your authentic self? Do you feel comfortable enough being your authentic self? Let's have this conversation. Let's keep this discussion going. We will be hosting more CT sessions. Again, that's creators therapy sessions. We'll be hosting more and more of these as time goes on. And please message us, comment down below if there's a topic you'd like to see us talk about. If you'd like to see Kahina back, let us know if there's something you'd like to hear her speak on, because she is a wealth of knowledge and we love her conversation. So Kahina, thank you for joining us again.
Pleasure as always. So good to see you.
And I hope you guys stay tuned for her actual original CT session, where she shares her experience with a brand online as being a person of color and some of the things our marginalized communities tend to go through that don't quite get a voice. She used her voice. And so I hope you will stay tuned and hear her story and maybe see yourself in her and make a few changes yourself and speak up and be you. So that is.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yes, thanks for tuning in. That is all for now. Peace, love, and all that good stuff. We will talk to you later.
Bye.